talking over the title with the music. Oh, we do that every week.
We do that every week. But we got a brand new thing here. I don't know if people are going to come in. Oh, boom! There's 3 people.
Hey.
Instead of 2. Right on. For those of you who don't know, this is Jeremy with Brightwell Aquatics. He flew in for our meat raffle yesterday, and I figured maybe he'd do share some knowledge on reefing while he's here. For real, there was a meat raffle.
And experiences on your meat raffle, first one ever. That was pretty cool.
In case you don't know, here in Minnesota, we gamble on subsistence. We actually we had $1,600 in meat that we gave away. Jeremy was kind enough to float the boat on half of it.
$1,600 a meat. That's insane.
Yeah, everybody left with 2 things.
Yeah, I got some pork tenderloins and I had lobster tails, but I don't cook them, so I traded them off for some half a ham or something.
Yeah, so it sounds super weird, but half the staff left with meat, and they got to go home, see their spouse, and say, I know how to provide for my family. So that was pretty awesome. And then we went out and what did we do? We pulled some pull tabs and drink beer, talk reefing all night.
Truly Minnesotan.
Thought out of nowhere.
$50.
Yes, yes. I lost my mortgage payment, but you won under $50.
Right, I was committed.
I haven't told my wife yet what I lost, so
Oops.
Don't tell her. Hopefully she's not watching. So what we thought we'd talk about today is a little bit about plumbing of all things.
Yeah, I was interested in that. Also, because I asked you while you were out of the room, what are we talking about? And Jeremy goes, we're going to talk about plumbing. So, But he said he wants to plumb your tank at home.
I know. Yeah, so that's what he said. I asked him if he wants to help at all on the tank in my house. He's like, yeah, I love plumbing, man. So thought maybe we'd do some plumbing, man. So what is it about plumbing that gets you all excited?
It was my first job out of a fish store in the early 90s. I worked for a company called California Aquarium Supply, and I built hundreds of Petcos and PetSmarts across this country. And so,
Hundreds?
Hundreds. I've laid miles of pipe.
Right on. Right on. All right. I building a tank and plumbing is probably one of my favorites too.
I hate it.
Hate it.
I don't want to
plumb.
Yeah,
you are kind of.
I don't cut straight. I glue terribly. Everything's all cattywampus and pulled. The ones I just don't want. I don't want to do it.
Kittywampus.
Cattywampus,
Not
cattywampus. I don't know. That's
You guys actually had a thing where you were talking about, do you prime the plumbing parts before you glue them?
Oh yeah.
I had an opinion.
Different
than yours.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah, I don't prime anything because most of the glues have primer already in them. So as long as they're not caked with dirt or grit, you're pretty.
So what's the deal? The reason for those who don't know, that a lot of primer is purple is so the inspector can come through the house and see that you actually did prime it and did it to code. So why is it for code that you need to prime, but for aquarium no?
In case you didn't clean the grit and the dirt off, that it's gonna leak eventually.
Yeah.
So is it totally unnecessary or just better?
Totally unnecessary.
Wow.
For any primer.
For any
Okay,
primer.
well, so I've heard this. I've heard this discussion. I've heard this discussion on the reef forums and the Aspiers TV and stuff, and people are like, "There's just not enough pressure in these aquarium systems where you need the adhesive, chemical bonding of the 2 PVC joints. Glue is just enough."
Well, if you use enough, you have a good 1.25 inches or 1.5 inches of glue joint.
Yeah.
If you can't get a seal on that, then you've really done something wrong.
Okay, man. So I do it the whole thing, and this is why. So for those of you who don't know, at one point in time, I put a frag system in my basement, and it was 4 feet by 8 feet by 10 inches tall, right? And I had 2 of them plumbed into the same sump, and there's hundreds and hundreds of dollars in plumbing into this thing. Plumbed it already. I'm super excited, and then there's 5 leaks, man. And I didn't use anywhere near enough union, so I'm cutting it all apart. And I did it 3 times, man. There was leaks every damn time.
Yeah.
And at the end, man, I'm all right, well, you know what? I'm not actually a plumber, so at the point, I didn't really know the difference. So I went in and researched, and I was supposed to sand the edges so the when you shove the piece of pipe in there, it doesn't create a little channel, And you're supposed to use the primers, not optional, and blah 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 blah. And at that point, man, I had spent 3 times as much time and money on my plumbing project. I'm gonna do it the way I'm told. And since then, I've never had a leak. So I just do it the way that the back of the can says, man. Do it this way. I assume somebody knows better than me.
Yeah.
But you know better than the can.
Yeah.
Yeah, he says. Yeah, there's plenty of Petco out there still running.
So I will put so much glue on it, on each fitting. the male and the female.
Yep.
And then when you put them together, you actually twist them. So you feel it. And then once it gets to the end of the socket, you're like, okay, I'm done.
Yeah.
You just hold it there because it's also tapered, so it'll, if you don't hold it in there, it'll force it out.
Well, so what I was reading from Well Done is actually when you put, it's not just a tapered fact, it's the fact that when you put that glue on there, it starts dissolving and it swells. So it's smushing it right out. So if you don't hold it in, man, you're going to lose your measurement.
That makes sense. That's if there's one thing about the hobby that I didn't know before I got in the hobby was it turned me into like a plumber. You know, in some cases, I can do plumbing jobs around the house. Like, you want me to like plumb a toilet maybe, or work on one, or like fix a leaky pipe underneath the sink? I gotcha. I know how to do that.
You know the guy Jason over, he's the owner of Vertex. He saw that plumbing video, the first one I did, right?
Yeah.
And he said, dude, why are you doing that thing on plumbing, gluing PVC, dude? It's so easy. I'm like, dude, I've never done it before, man. Like, I had 2 pieces of PVC and some glue, man. Like, I had to go actually research how to do this proper because it's not, I mean, afterwards it's obvious, but beforehand, like, I've never had to plumb a thing in my whole life. At what point in my life prior to this have you ever used PVC to plumb anything?
I've watched my grandpa do it because that's what he does for a living, like with backhoes and septic systems. But I didn't know what he was doing for real. So just like, slap some of this on there and go.
My grandpa was a farmer, so I didn't get that.
That's a big point too, right? So if you're out in the elements, like you dug a big trench and you've laid a bunch of your material out there, it's like exposed. You can get grit and stuff on there.
So you would use primer in that case then?
Yeah. And also the point that you made about the pressure. There's no pressure on any of the drains that we do, and even our returns are not under pressure. They're
4 psi probably.
Much less than that probably, I think, maybe.
So then Schedule 80 is just for aesthetic purposes only?
Just.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
it looks good.
It's built for like what, a 80 psi or something like
right.
Yeah.
Huge application.
It looks super cool.
Yeah, it looks awesome, especially when you put the colored PVC on it.
Blue and gray, my favorite.
Green and gray was mine.
Really?
Yeah, because I had also had the emerald trigger system sump, which was green, and I just wanted everything to match really nice.
Who was the guy that made the blue and gray skimmer?
Blue and gray skimmer.
There was a guy out of Europe that made a blue and gray protein skimmer and related equipment. I can't remember.
Like a downdraft skimmer?
I bet you somebody in the comments will know.
Yeah, if you know who made a blue and gray skimmer, comment in here. Let's get
it
in
was
the comments.
it was not Deltec, but in that same kind of crew. Now you're up. Well, anyway, all right. So we're gonna keep talking. You got questions up here? We'll answer them. All right. We might just start with the questions as much as possible, but I got a bunch of things in my head as well. So how do you not cut straight without a pipe cutter? I agree. You get the hacksaw out, and no matter what, it always kind of drifts off to the side.
Yeah,
so how do you do it?
So they have these really cool hand tools that it's like a bone cutter.
Like battery operated?
Yeah, no, with your hands, and it's like a lever activated, and that'll cut it straight. But the best thing, especially if you're going to be using it often, doing a lot of cuts, it's like a chop saw. It has like a...
There you go.
No, it's not, it doesn't have teeth on it, but it's like a
really fine tooth type.
Right.
Yeah, almost like diamond grit bit on the edge of it. Because I've always used my, I'm cutting 2x4s, and then tomorrow I'm cutting PVC, and you get these nasty serrated edges. Some of it chip off and break off, and then you mess up your wood saw blade too. But
so we actually do that here. So we have a chop saw, like a chop box, saw, and what we do is we put a plastic blade on it. So if you use a wood blade on it, expect the thing to tear it up and then shoot it in your face.
Yeah, that's true.
It will catch on the plastic and shoot out, and it's not fun. If you use the plastic blade, the bevel of the teeth is just like a little bit different, and it just goes right through it. It's a very, very subtle difference, but it goes right through it. Another thing we use is the little $5 chop, or like a chop block. It's like a little plastic thing that you can use your hacksaw in.
Yeah, it has angles already in there.
It has 2 little slits in it, and so it keeps the blade straight, and you go right through. So like $5. This is probably what most of you will use because it's $5. You're not going to go buy a chop saw for this.
A hacksaw is super cheap too, and get a new blade for it. You're in this thing for like less than 20.
They have the little spinnies too. Has a little blade on it that you can screw it
Tighten
in.
it down and then just yeah.
Yeah, those well, for like most of your viewers, probably that thing they sell it at Home Depot. They're red, they're cutters, and it will give you a straight cut every single time.
The only thing I've noticed about the cutters like that is it leaves that little lip on the edge, right? And so important to, in my mind, to sand that off. You're laughing like.
Lots of glue, just lots of glue.
Just more
It's
glue.
sloppy, and then once it's, as you put it in there, you have a towel or something that you over the glue, and then nice little clean weld on the outside.
So he wants to plumb your tank at home.
I don't know, no primer, I guess.
I'll throw out a challenge right now.
Oh!
I will glue every single joint, and you won't have one leak.
No sandpaper.
No sandpaper.
No primer.
Wow.
Oh my God! I don't know if I can let you do that. You're ADD and freaking me out right now. Just thinking about the leaks and stuff.
Or the gambling,
Are you gonna have a floor
OCD, I
drain?
guess. Yeah, well, I don't know. All right, well, maybe I'll take you up on that. I just can't really. I'm making me uncomfortable just thinking about it. But all right, well, so we'll see. Maybe we can do that. Take that challenge. What's the next one here? I read that primer can weaken your connections. I've read that same thing too, and I haven't read it from any of the glue people. And a handful of plumber people have read that, have said that on like Reef to Reef and whatnot. Have you ever heard that primer actually hurts it?
No, but I'm in the middle. I don't have an opinion either way.
It softens the material, so I guess there may be some lag time in how long you leave the primer there until it really starts softening it before you actually glue it, and then maybe there's some issue with the chemical bond. I don't know.
So, it's possible.
So back in the day, like before the colored PVC, I used to take acetone and I would just clean because they had the red letters on it.
Yeah.
I didn't want to see any of that red letters on my
no
pretty plumbing, so I would just clean that, and that acts as like a primer of sorts, and it does actually start to melt that outer layer, so it gives you a cleaner. So maybe I was priming at the time.
You're priming the
entire
letters
pipe.
off. Yeah, so for those of you that use white pipe, that's a good one. Use acetone. You can wash off all of those little blue letters that come from Home Depot or Lowe's or whatnot, and then it looks nice and clean instead of seeing all those stuff. Also, the little barcodes that come on the fittings, you can get that off with some acetone.
Yeah.
And that's a good point with the primer is actually that you are kind of melting it, but also you're cleaning it. So if you are in like a dirty environment, it's getting all the stuff off and maybe even manufacturing oils or whatnot. But to Frank's question, it's possible. I've heard that thing that primer can actually make a less weak connection. For our application here in reefing, I just don't think that there's any way that would be accurate to a degree that would matter.
Yeah.
There might be some kind of scientific nerdy stuff out there that it is 5% less or more pressure, but that's in an application where you have a lot of pressure.
And don't think that purple primer is the only way to go too. There's clear primer. That's the way to go.
Purple is only for home use.
Yeah, you don't need it.
For your inspector to come and say, "Yep, you did definitely prime this."
Yeah.
Clear is for reefers who don't want to see purple.
Yeah, that's true.
And for that matter, actually, the gray has a gray glue, and so people ask about Schedule 80 glue. And the thing about the Schedule 80 glue is it does not need to be. It actually has some of the Schedule 80 stuff melted into the actual PVC, and the only reason it looks for me is it looks nice because you get like a little bit of a bead of that gray. Kind of looks like it was like PVC
welded. Yeah, that'd be pretty cool.
I've talked to the plumbing people, and they told me there's nothing specific about the Schedule 80 that requires that glue, other than it looks the same. But clear though.
Looks the same.
I don't know. I guess I'd understand better if it was white. All right, Teflon tape on PVC threaded joints. Yes or no?
Yes.
Always. I don't know how many times I've taken apart threaded pieces because they started leaking, and then as soon as you apply 2 wraps of thread tape, done. And then there's the blue tape, we got a couple different ones. You got wide white Teflon tape. You got this skinny Teflon tape, and then there's this blue stuff. And I know I saw it around here a second ago, but it's not Teflon. It's a lot stronger than Teflon. But
to your point, 2 to 3 wraps, all you need.
Yeah.
If you put too much, you're gonna leak.
Yeah.
If you don't put any, you're gonna leak.
Yeah.
So it's 2 to 3 wraps
So
in the direction of the threads.
Oh yeah, definitely threads, otherwise it just comes off.
Right.
So two things. The Teflon tape does is one, it does fill in some gaps and stuff in the threads, but also it allows you to twist it on much farther. It's kind of like greases the whole thing.
Oh yeah.
And so it allows you to spin it in much tighter than you would normally be able to do by hand. Also allows you to get it off at a later date if you need to. But yeah, so a lot of people like to use the threaded stuff because you can take it apart, right? In theory, glue or thread?
Glue.
Yeah.
Glue, thread.
I like threaded stuff because I'm in that same camp, especially like on the back of a bulkhead that's got a female thread on it, where I can thread in like an adapter piece and then go PVC with glue. But if you use enough unions, then you really don't need a bunch of thread pieces.
Spend money, buy the unions.
By the unions. I agree 100%. So I found that the thread thing is like a white whale, man. Like it looks like it exists, and then once you assemble it all, it's like, oh, well, I can't actually unscrew that because I glued it somewhere else, you know? And so unless, like, well, hey, I could put unions in here, and then I could get around that. Well, like, if you put the union in, you don't actually need to thread it in,
right?
You know, in most cases. So, like, I would agree at a couple of points there might be some areas like connecting it to the overflow on your tank, maybe like where two things totally come together. But at the same time, which one is more likely to leak?
The threaded.
For sure. 100% for sure the threads are more likely to leak than the bonded glued weld. And it's not glue, by the way. It is chemically melting both of them, and they're forming to one. And at that point is stronger than like the pipe itself. If you go to try to break it, it will break the pipe before it'll break the joint.
Yes.
So definitely welding is better than threads.
Well, and you get nasty, like on the threads, you get salt creep. Like,
Okay.
that's gross too.
That was going to be one of my next questions. So if you develop a leak, if it's really slow, are you one of those in the camp that let it leak till the salt creep dries up and then it will automatically stop the leak, or actually go
My
fix
OCD would just kick in too hard.
Okay.
There's no way.
Both.
I've got both. If it's a joint hanging over the sump where it's dripping back into the sump, I'll let it go until the salt creep seals it.
I'm guilty. I have encountered a leak on a tank, and like, oh, look at the salt creep, but it stopped. and
don't ever clean it.
Yeah, fixing it means that I'm going to have to drain the tank and move it back out.
Right.
That's a major project, man. Like, just check it every once in a while. Put a leak detector down there. I don't know, but especially if it's a place where there's zero pressure, like an overflow going down. There's a good chance that just filling the gap with some salt creep will actually solve the problem, almost permanently. If it's under pressure, where there's like pressure pushing the water out, you should probably solve it immediately because it's never never, but very unlikely to solve.
Yeah.
Maybe you'll get like some detritus gunk stuck in there, on the way out. Let's just hope for like extra detritus.
Blue Monster, that's the name of that.
All right, man. So yes, definitely Teflon tape on every threaded piece. You don't need it on things that have an actual O-ring seal, like the threads on a bulkhead or threads on a union. Yeah, you don't need it there, but threads where the two pieces are going together, you definitely do.
Sure.
All right,
cool.
What hat is Jeremy wearing?
Reef to reef.
Reef to reef.
Nice.
Yep. I caught him at Reef to Palooza wearing a Marine Depot hat. And I suppose he's got to spread the love around, but I told him no, not today.
Thanks.
What else we got? Reef to reef hat. How do you get a Reef to reef hat?
Go talk to Rev.
That's it?
Yeah. Well,
I shared a booth with him. I didn't even get one.
I think they're like $15 or whatever.
He's got a shop somewhere. You can get reef to reef gear.
He was here selling shirts and stuff.
Ah, dang it.
We give
he
him
has
away.
little golf towels too, I think, at those shows.
Well, and the hat's notoriously you're getting better and better in our
That one's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I can't do the flat brim thing and the big, tall,
From
billboard
California,
trucker,
we all wear flat bills.
there you go.
California.
See.
All right. Randy, you're talking about your tank in the past tense. Do you have one now?
Let's see. At home, no, I don't. And so I did, and I've lived all over the place because the military, you move all over the place. But I had 125 that I plumbed myself in soft tubing plumbing too. I didn't even do PVC. I didn't want to deal with it. braided nylon, which was a nightmare, and a 60-gallon tank that I plumbed in PVC. And luckily, when the ULM SPS came out of Ryan's office, I got to put it in my office, which was already plumbed by a professional, Aaron, the guy who's doing all the plumbing in the lab and everything else around here. So I didn't have to touch plumbing on that one either.
Aaron and I stared at that thing, man, for
it was
like
gorgeous.
2 days straight. I mean, like, because we had to like incorporate 2 return pumps, 2 overflows, UV sterilizer, man, like all this stuff in the back of it.
An external skimmer.
3 return, or the Synergy Reef overflow into this thing, and so I mean, we just stared and like built it and built it and built it and built it and built it, and now you get all our hard work.
It's gorgeous.
Yep. Like I don't have a tank at home either, by the way, but I will soon. So I lived in a 1908 house for the last 2 years, and I just had my son was born like 2.5 years ago in there, and I've been dreaming about a tank. And so the problem is like you get kind of into this for a while, and then like, well, I'm not going to set up like a 40-gallon breeder in my house at this point. Like,
right.
I want a big tank. I want to do cool, bigger, badder. In an 1808 house, that means like tearing the floor out and putting steel supportive beams in and stuff. And like, you know, my wife's like cool, but I better have a really good plan for that. You know, to tear out the whole floor. I mean, this is not a cheap thing anymore.
Right.
And like all electrical and stuff in a house that old too. So now I live in a brand new house. I have a walkout basement, which means I don't have to put it on the second floor because we'll actually spend time in the basement. And I can go right in the cement. New tank coming. We were debating it yesterday a little bit.
Yeah, Jeremy was thinking about putting a tank in there where you have to swim in it to maintain the back end.
Yeah.
Or a catwalk.
Yeah, so he wanted like 4 foot deep, and I'm like, dude, it's up against the wall. And how am I going to clean it? He's like, dude, you want it to clean it if you maintain it proper. And I'm like, oh, man, really? That's where you're going to go? So I don't know. But yeah, we have them flow. But also, how many tanks around us we have to take care of at work, man? There's like, I got 3 tanks in my office.
I think there's 30 now here, around 30 in the entire office. Between the customer service and everybody who has one at their desk, we're right around there.
It was the thing that I took out of my walkthrough yesterday. Like, man, this is run by reefers. Like, there is nothing but reef tanks in this place.
I mean, like, everybody almost gets one. So, like, the new accountant comes in, never seen a reef tank in their whole life. Man, they like, hey, can I get a tank? Yep, here it is. You know, whatever you need. Luckily, we get enough like returns and stuff that you can pretty much put anything you want in it. There's a pile of reefing gear available for your pleasure. You know, so man, it is. I think that's one of my favorite parts. Actually, is you just walk around.
I just follow you around and like pick up your crumbs.
There's all kinds of extra stuff. Yeah, you got like I mean, that's probably like a $2,000 tank. No, I bet you more.
Oh,
it's like a $2,000 60 cube.
The ULM SPS in my office?
Yeah, it's probably more
easily.
Actually.
Yeah.
Maybe it's 3-4. I don't know.
I don't even have lighting on it. It's that much.
Yeah, I mean, it's got the apex in it, and the 2 cores, and the
UVs and flow meters,
and recirculating skimmer in the front, and yeah.
Probably started on your rock now.
You know, I did the plumbing order for that tank actually, and this is a 60-gallon tank, dude. It was $600 in plumbing.
What?
Yeah, like oh my gosh, man.
I'll take the crumbs.
Right on.
Me too.
Any tips for new hobbyists getting ready to plumb a tank?
Oh,
I got
cool.
some. I bet we all do.
Yeah.
You shoot, man.
Tips for new hobbyists. Research. You know, make sure that you are giving yourself enough room. Don't like crowd, your PVC in where you're going to be working. So make sure that the pipe is clear of all skimmers and filter socks or filter rollers, and that you have unions enough to where you can take stuff out and swap it if the pump goes down. It's a pain to kind of like get it out if you're twisting it, or if you have a union, you can take the union and pull the pump out. Then you can disconnect all the male to female threads.
How many unions? So just for those who know, a union is where you just connect 2 pieces of pipe and it unscrews. So you can take it out real easy. How many unions?
I don't know. It depends on the application. It's very subjective.
The answer is as many as you can put, man. Because like you'll never ever wonder like oh, I wish I never put all those unions in, right? But you will at some point say, damn it, I wish I put those unions in.
Well, from experience too, like if you're having to cut out a pump, you go in underneath the tank and you're cutting PVC to get a pump out because it failed. Like you learn. I'm never doing that again. Like, so let's just spend the money on the unions. I mean,
tip for me then, closely related to that one, is if you're doing an elbow, right, so you're gonna have to get all of these, like if you're doing PVC, hard PVC, you're gonna have to get all of these angles like perfect, and it's hard, man. And so the first thing you gotta do is dry fit the whole thing together, and you gotta go take a marker on the fitting and the pipe, and so that you know exactly the right angle to get to it. And like you better have done all of them perfect, or all of a sudden it's hard glued together, and like where your drain comes out in your pipe is like a ½ inch off, man. And if you try to like push it in there, you're gonna produce leaks and pressure on both the tank and the sump where they connect, right? Which is no good on the glass.
right.
So what I found is almost anywhere I'm gonna use an elbow, you know, it's almost best just to put a union underneath it, because a union can swivel. So I no longer need to eye up the two little, lines that I made.
Oh, yeah.
I can put the union in and I can just swivel the thing and turn it to whatever angle. So almost any angle that I put on the thing, I'll put a union, because it allows me to disassemble and assemble it, with a lot less care, or not care, but like a lot more less, precise perfection. And if this is your first one, like you're talking here. I would say that most people are not going to get this right. So like you can get it right by allowing yourself the flexibility to be able to adjust it. And I think I've said this in a few videos. First project, no unions because I'm cheap. Second project, unions because I understand that being cheap was stupid. Third project, unions everywhere they can possibly go, because I want to not only be able to take it apart, to clean it, or something gets clogged in there or whatnot, but someday I'm gonna want a different sump and stuff, and like, hey man, I wanted a refugium now, and my sump didn't allow for a refugium. Now I need to like reconfigure the plumbing, and the fact that I can take it off everywhere will allow me to like redo the whole thing without cutting all of it apart, and it just gives me a lot of flexibility. So unions everywhere.
And draw it out, like your sump, draw it out so that and sometimes people think like, okay, well a 90 is gonna get me to the back of the tank, right? But sometimes like a 90 and a 45, just thinking about it, like going straight out of a pump and going straight back to go up with a 90, but with a 45, so you kick it out to the side, so you still have access to your sump. So just thinking about plumbing in a way that's like, I think that 90s and 45s together are way better than a 90 and a 90 to make a turn. And so if you just kick it up with like a 90 and then you have a 45, you got all that room in the back. So like even with your drains and stuff like that, there's nothing in like our size tanks. If you're in a public aquarium, you're going to be thinking about hydraulics a little bit more than like what we do. But like having drains like snake around, you don't have to worry about it as much.
For me, I don't know. For me, there's a couple things. One, practice. Like practice cutting one and gluing a piece together and getting the feel for like turning that corner. Like this is one you're probably not going to use on the tank, but I can go buy a cheap fitting I can buy like a couple 50-cent fittings and a piece of PVC from the hardware store, and like actually practice my hand at the primer, practice my hand at the glue, how it feels to push the thing in. So and do a little practice piece, so that don't practice on your final project if you had never glued a PVC before. And then your point about like dry fitting, really cool. You should definitely do it after you draw it out and then dry fit. Then when you get the glue and stuff in there, like your dry fit's not the perfect measurement. You're gonna have more leeway when you get the glue in. So don't think that your dry fit's gonna be the exact measurement. Now I'm gonna have to glue and everything's lined up perfectly. Because when you start gluing it and snaking the glue together, you're gonna end up short. You have to account for a little bit of leeway that your PVC piece is gonna go into the elbow. And then there's for most like Schedule 80 and Schedule 40, there's like they say like a thumb or so, like you should account for how far the pipe goes in, but there's measurements and stuff.
You
like
should stick a ruler in there.
Well, it's interesting too, because like if it's 1.25 inches, the recess of the female portion, so you measure from 2 points, and you go, okay, well, I got 1.25 inches on this side, 1.25 inches on that side. I'm going to add those two.
Yeah.
Never works out
I
because
know.
the glue will push it out, like it won't stay all the way seated, and then you're wrong. So
I take, man, now a lot of times, push it in there, and then I'll hit it with a rubber mallet, man. Get it all the way in there and hold it. If you hold it for 10 seconds, it'll stay.
Yeah.
So I want to get around the mystery amount that it squirts out or doesn't go all the way in. Get it in there. Rubber mallet all the way in there and get it all where I need it. So I'll just share 2 other tips. I like your 45 thing. We use it a lot with 2 instead of 190. 2 45s, and then it allows you to do angles that you would just never be able to do with a 45. So 45 just here, this can kind of go anywhere, especially if you put 2 45s on the other side, and you can kind of snake around things. I wish we could pull up the ULM tank maybe, but that one had so many double 45s in it because it's the only way to kind of snake around all the things that we needed to snake around. The other piece, despite what you said, if you're new, I would absolutely buy the $1 worth of sandpaper and scrape the edges off from where you cut it, especially if you're doing it with a hacksaw, because it leaves all these little ridges on there, and when you squirt it in there, it will create a channel in the glue. And yes, you should twist it, and hopefully it'll go away, but it's literally $1 and maybe 10 seconds of effort on the end. I would do it myself.
Good advice.
I would also say, if it's your first time plumbing a tank ever or plumbing anything, try soft plumbing. Plumb a tank soft. See what it's like. That's easy because you can get the barbed fittings. You can get step-down barbed fittings. You can get, elbows in 45 that are just barbed. You can get clamps for them all. And then nylon, braided nylon you can buy these, the long runs. You can run it through hot water to straighten it out. You can heat it with a heat gun or the hair dryer to straighten it out. But you can definitely do soft plumbing all day.
Yeah.
I like a hybrid, actually. So we've done hybrid on a bunch of different tanks. I think on the How to Start a Saltwater Tank series, we did hybrid towards the end. And what that looks like is I like to hard plumb to the sump, hard plumb to the tank, bulkhead, fitting coming out, union. And then out of the union, I'll glue in a barbed spigot to barb fitting, and then take the soft tubing down to where I need it. Now, measuring that kind of tubing is super easy, right? And it goes onto the barbs. And you might think, hey, barbs, I don't need a union anymore because I can wiggle it off. No, man, don't do that. You're going to create leaks and stuff over time doing that. Definitely put a union so you can kind of take off the whole piece together.
Yeah.
For the most part, I would say soft tubing's pretty good. Over a long enough timeline, you're probably going to start to see a little bit of salt creep coming out of them, and it may be time to put new clamps on or change the pipe every 5 years or whatnot.
Do you sell both the braided and regular vinyl?
So black and braided. We don't sell the regular because that's stupid.
Yeah.
And then silicone.
Share why that would be
No,
dumb.
I was just curious.
Silicone is so expensive too. We
silicone?
do have silicone, but to plumb your tank an entire city. You get more flexibility out of it.
Yeah, it's $20 a foot or something. Yeah. So here's the thing about the tubing. When you're going to use a soft tubing, it has to be rigid for the drains because you can't kink. If it kinks, you're going to flood your floor. So it cannot kink. We do sell braided nylon. Braided nylon is a good place where it's not going to get any light. If it gets any light back there, then you want to use the black because we don't want to grow algae in there and whatnot, which will clog. Not only could it's unlikely to clog the whole thing, more likely to grow stuff and then it releases and clogs somewhere else. Mold. Yeah, just you don't want any light in there. So black is probably better in most cases than the braided nylon, but it needs to be sturdy. It needs to be strong and difficult to kink. The silicone, however, this is specific to the AC pumps, is if you got silicone going from your pump all the way up, you can take it to wherever you want, but the silicone removes that vibration between the pump and your plumbing. So it is much, much quieter. And DC pumps are now so quiet you don't even hear they're on.
Right.
But if you're running a cheaper AC pump, then a little bit of silicone will silence it. It looks cool if you take it all the way up, but really all you need to do is take it to wherever. Sometimes what we'll do is put a bulkhead in the sump, put the pump into the bulkhead on the sump, so it has that anti-vibration effect, and then we'll hard plumb or soft plumb off of that bulkhead back up to the tank. I like to have firm places where things belong. I think Terrence said to me, man, a clean-looking tank, man, is a safe tank, right? And he's just right. If it's the wiring looks clean, the plumbing looks clean, it is almost certainly it's a sign that somebody cared about what they're doing, and it drastically increases the chance you did it right.
Right.
All right.
I agree.
Next question.
Cool.
Oh man, they're coming in.
There's tons of them. Where are we at? What's the most obvious advantage of knowing how to cut PVC pipes for marine systems?
Most obvious advantage for knowing how to cut pipes. What would that mean? Obvious advantage for just using
Leak
hard. So hard plumbing in general, I would say the biggest advantage to me is it looks cool. Because it's not necessary, but it's also safer, right? Like it's not going to kink, it's not going to leak.
Right.
I mean, you do right.
Well, then you have all those tubes everywhere. Like, I mean, it probably helps with flow characteristics, but it gets in the way because you're having a piece of, tubing going over where if you plumb it out of the way, you can get all the plumbing out of the way so you still have access to your full sump.
That was a good point actually about the flow characteristics, because if you have a small arc that kind of goes up to the tank, you're actually going to have way less head pressure loss than a bunch of elbows and whatnot. But you're also right that just it's a mess of
last thing you want to do is move some tubing out of the way to get to your skimmer cup, or you got to get in there to clean some detritus out of your sump, and then you got all this plumbing in your way. Getting it out of the way of the sump so that it gets to where it needs to go without as much interference is probably for me would be the number one thing when you're planning out your sump. Take that into consideration because you can't redo it. You can, but it's a pain.
I'd say also this is kind of just like any hobby, So the first one you do, I just need it to work, right? I set up a tank, I just need it to work. The soft tubing gets me there, it's easy. Second tank, actually, it's a little bit more not just function, form and function start to come into play. So if you were into tricking out your car or whatever, first one when you're 16, man, is I want the car to go fast.
Right.
Then later on in life, man, I want it to open up the hood and have it look fast. And so things just kind of evolve. So as part of the hobby, for a lot of people, not everyone, but when you build it, it's not just the function, but I want to open up the cabinet, I want to go to the fish room, and I want it to look as cool as the tank itself looks. Right. That's part of the hobby.
Right, it's back to your car analogy, the engines now, you lift it up, you don't see any wires, everything's got covers on it, and you don't see anything, that's the goal. You just open up your cabinets and all your equipment's right there to be accessed.
Yep, right on. What's the next one? When plumbing, can you have too many 90-degree elbows in your system? So every 90 is going to reduce the head pressure, right? I mean, there's no too many, is there? I mean,
I don't think in the flow characteristics, especially with what you've been talking about with flow, so 3x or 5x, with the variable pumps now, it doesn't really come into play. Before, if you used to go back, I need 10 times out of this return pump, you're sitting there making sure you get a really big pump, and then all those 90s cutting it down, you wasted all that money on that 10x.
When you considered it as part of the flow.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's the only reason you'd consider is 290s too much is hydraulics or flow characteristics of what this is going to do to the equipment output. But and what we're doing, I don't think too many.
For those who don't know, we used to, everybody used to suggest 10x turnover.
Yeah, 7 to 10.
Yeah, and that was from an era where that was part of the flow in the tank, right? And now with power heads, there's just so many cheaper, way better ways to add flow to the tank. Now it all is about getting water to the filtration and getting heating the water.
Yeah.
And in that environment, man,
2 times?
2 is probably okay. 5 is probably overkill.
Yeah.
And at that point, when we're talking about so little flow, the elbows and stuff just don't seem to matter as much because the difference here is so little in the amount of cost of the pump. I could worry about all these elbows, or I could spend $15 extra on the pump and just not worry about it.
Right.
Right. Right on, man. Next one.
Is there a way to unkink black vinyl tubing? The overflow drain is starting to kink, and preventing it with a clamp.
Is there a way?
While it's already on there? Let me
Cut it out and redo it.
Boom. Yeah, I agree. I would do one of two things, man. I would either cut it out and redo it, or I'd cut out the part that mattered, and I'd put barb fittings in there too, like an elbow or what.
They do have a union straight, just like a straight union type fitting for barb too, where you just barb to barb straight in. So it might help straighten it out, but.
Yeah, so if I'm going to make a tight curve where it's likely to kink, they also sell an elbow barb to barb.
Yep.
I would make it that way so you solve your problem permanently.
Yeah.
But if you try to unkink it with using barb clamps to hold it open, that will work for a moment. And then one day you will say, damn it, I should have never done that because water's all over my floor and this is just not worth what I thought I was trying to save. So don't do that, man. Go ahead and just replace it. It's not going to cost a lot. You could, $10. I bet you can solve your problem. All right, next. Jeremy, could you explain the difference between Microbacter 7 and Microbacter Clean?
All right.
Yeah.
So
let's get into some Brightwell stuff.
Greg Carroll. Oh, all right, right on. He's going to make us give away an Apex or something soon.
So Microbacter 7 is basically our bacteria has 7 different strains. So it's going to have aerobic and anaerobic bacteria in there that's going to do everything that you need. So it's our all-in-one, if you will. And Microbacter Clean does exactly what it says it's going to do. It's mostly scavenger bacteria, so it's going to clean up detritus, it's going to clean up mulm that grows in your sump and on your fittings, and it's going to clean up the aquarium, especially if your husbandry has been laxed a little bit. Obviously, the best scenario is get in there and clean up your tank.
Yeah.
But if you need a little bit of help, Microbacter Clean is the way to go. And actually, Greg has he's got one of his friends in the club in Southern California that just has reset his system, and it was really dirty. We sent him some Microbacter Clean, and he was like, "Wow, this stuff is amazing." Greg sent me some videos, so it works.
It's funny. Like those types of things for me have sometimes had that kind of same wow look, and then I'm gonna try the same thing on another tank, and it doesn't. Like we used a competitor product once, and it literally wiped out all the cyano and everything in the tank, and we're like, this thing was sent from God, man.
Right.
And I tried it in another tank, and so it's a little bit more complex than always works. Doesn't always work. There's always a little warfare that's going on in the tank, and you never know what's really going to win.
Right.
But what I think about it is cool. So the WWC guys uses the Microbacter 7 on all their new tanks, and so some people have these super fast acting tank cycles that's only looking at ammonia. And like you said, your stuff is looking at not just processing ammonia, but all the scavenging bacteria and really getting the tank ready for
the long term
new tank.
Yeah.
Not just processing ammonia, which is one of that element's going to come almost no matter what, right? So and maybe the other things too, but we're going to make them happen faster, right?
So in our theory, if we were to produce, starter bacterias, the ones that work really well, are typically live, and they are susceptible to temperature.
Right.
So extreme colds below freezing, dead.
Yeah.
Anything over 80 degrees, dead. So when we look at it, we're like, okay, it's a lot of risk. It's sitting in a warehouse or it's in transit somewhere. It just runs the risk of it not doing what it says it's going to do as far as the efficacy. So what we try to do is we try to give you a really potent product to not only cycle your aquarium in a normal, what we consider normal, within 30 days, be completely through the nitrogen cycle. And then at the end of that, we put other bacteria in there that's going to help you through that ugly stage. And so I think that's the one thing that makes us a little bit different than some of the others. And a lot of people try to compare us to those other bacteria, and I've had this conversation with numerous people, just don't even compare us. We're not even in the same ballpark.
So my experience on that was when I entered the hobby, Biospira was the one, right? And it had to be in a cooler to work, and because of that, you shouldn't buy it online and all this stuff, buy it in the fish store and whatnot. and it definitely worked. You know, as a person now that has like worked on the other side of this thing, the industry, like it didn't mysteriously pop up at the fish store on its own, right? It had to travel, you know, across the country in the winter to get to New York or Minnesota or Montana or whatever. And it's sitting on the back of a semi, man, for 5 days. It's gonna freeze.
Yeah.
And so, like, even though it looks like it's in your fish store, it's just fine. So, you know, getting something that, you know, especially like the freeze is one thing also, but over 80 degrees in the summer, man, those trucks are sweltering.
Right.
You know, so like, you know, having like a product like yours that allows for a wider range of temperatures is, you know, maybe not as fast acting, but will actually work when you use it. Not just if I got this miraculous bottle that the manufacturer sent me one day for testing, right? Overnighted it in a cooler. Yeah, a very different scenario. So yeah, I don't know. I thought it was interesting too. And so now all the most popular ones are not refrigerated, and so that's how you'd know which one of these two you're getting beyond like more research. If it has to be refrigerated, it's volatile and may or may not. I would buy it in mild months of the year. If it doesn't have to be refrigerated, it is the types of bacteria that are more dormant and are less susceptible bacteria.
Is there any reason you'd use like the Microbacter 7 outside of just setting up a new tank?
Well, I mean, Microbacter 7 got its name for that. Not so much cycling aquariums, but actually running into like diatom blooms or cyanobacteria blooms or something like that, and it works really well at cleaning up because it has some of the same bacteria that the Microbacter clean, just in lower forms. So like when we make the Microbacter clean, it's really aggressive. So if you think about it, it's like it's not as complete. Microbacter clean is not as complete as Microbacter 7 as far as like the population of bacteria. But as far as like those ones that are workers, like scavengers, it's way elevated. So it's gonna be like a kicked up version of Microbacter 7 for cleaning up an aquarium.
I think, man, this is kind of a relatively new thing for reefers, like to think of bacteria as a solution for really anything. Because they just really thought about it as a cycle in a tank. And like it's still a little bit of a mystery to a lot of reefers. So I bet you 5 years from now, as things progress, this will be like a part of staple of how you maintain certain elements of your tank. So that'll be fun to watch how that goes down. All right, let's just we got about 13 more minutes, right? We're gonna go to 11:30.
Yeah, and more people are asking about Brightwell stuff. Plumbing.
All right, let's ask some Brightwell stuff then, man. Go shoot for it. We got 'em here.
There's a few of them here. Nope, that was plumbing. Here. Can Jeremy explain how Neo Zeo works differently from other zeolites?
It works the same. Basically,
they look the same to me.
They're the same. So Neo Zeo works just the same way as the other zeolites.
Cool.
Yeah,
that was easy.
All right. Let's see. Okay. Should one turn off skimmers and filtration when dosing Microbacter 7?
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think that's common along a lot of the bacterial ones is like dose this to your tank, shut off your skimmer, shut off filtration type stuff, but dose this to your tank and then maybe 24 hours, 48 hours, turn it all back on.
Right.
To give the bacteria, is that more to give the bacteria a chance to like go to the surfaces, populate
Well, if you're treating like anything in the aquarium, you should always shut down your skimmer. Like if you're dosing like calcium or something like that, you don't need to do that. But anything that's like chelated or preserved or bacteria, like always shut down your skimmer so it gives the inhabitants time to like come in contact with that.
Yeah.
So we got some Bryopsis in the 160 over here, and we're gonna put some fluconazole in it, and I'll probably share that experience with you a little bit later. But like in that experience too, we're going to turn off the skimmer and make sure that it's not removing the medication, and we're also like going to remove carbon. And so some of that stuff, like you're not always sure what the skimmer or what the carbon's going to remove, but like just knee-jerk turn off some of the important things that are really effective at removing various elements from the tank. Just turn them off by knee-jerk in most cases. All right, man. What else we got here? What are your thoughts on the PTFT Fe paste. So that is like instead of tape, you can paste it.
Leakers.
Leakers?
Yeah, it's like it would be like adding like, for me, I mean it works the same way as it's just a liquid Teflon.
Yeah.
Right. But it's the same as like if you were to use silicone, right? You're gonna get a seal, but then what happens is if anything tweaks that, like you move the pump, it's gonna break that seal, and then that water's gonna find its way through the thread. So I'm not a huge. I mean, you will have that to a certain extent with
tape.
Yeah. But not to the same extent with, in my personal opinion. With the
I think
stuff.
Neptune for the flow meters, they specifically say like you should use that pasty type stuff.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I remember that now.
You could. The one thing that paste does that tape doesn't do is it gives you the ability to make sure that you put it all the way on there without running the risk of putting. If you put too much tape on, especially something like that flow sensor, and you over tighten it, you could crack that housing.
Oh yeah.
And then like.
I don't know. Those are too expensive to crack.
So maybe that's why they recommend that with Neptune.
I've actually done that before. I've cracked bulkheads by spinning them in too far that way.
Oh yeah.
Tapered fittings.
Easily.
All right. Any tips for noise reduction on noisy plumbing? So normally it's two things, right? It's either air going down the plumbing or vibrations from the pump going up, right? So pump going up, silicone. Try to get some kind of anti-dampening or vibration dampening in between the pipe and your pump. So a little piece of, you don't need more than 6 inches of silicone tubing and some barb fittings. You can make that happen. Going down, the air is what makes all the noise.
Air is the biggest thing.
Yeah,
for sure.
So everyone now has shifted away from your like Dursos and stuff that limit the amount of air and eliminates the air with using a gate valve or a ball valve, going down to create a full siphon so it doesn't take any air, and then having like an emergency backup in case that siphon gets clogged.
I was just talking to somebody about this, about quieting their return or their drain line, and they just said, for the life of me, I can't get this thing to like stop siphon or to get a full siphon. I keep getting, it won't. The force of water coming down, because you got your drain pipe down submerged into the sump, and they said the force of the water is just not forcing the air out, and have to just take a little bit of air line and shove it up in there, and then suck all the air out with a lift pump or something, or maybe
It'll just happen over time too.
Eventually, yeah.
So I got a good one on this type of full siphon: ball valve, gate valve.
I like ball valves for anything that has to do with like if you want to remove something. So like if you have your pump coming out and you have a union on that pump, have a ball valve there so that you can cut the water coming from the tank back into the sump. Just makes everything so much easier. But if you're trying to control water precisely, gate valve.
Same thing, all day. Well, I know, because these true the CPEX ball valves are pretty smooth at fine tuning and stuff. So like the gate valve,
This is my problem, and my problem is I don't like either one. So my problem with the gate valve is the gate valve works really good at being super precise, right? And so I can tune it and get the exact amount with just tiny little tunes, right? However, every time I go up to it, I forget which way is opening it and shutting it based on the orientation of it. And if I go too far a little way one way, I have no visual representation of like how far open or closed it is, and I just end up messing with it, and it just drives me insane.
Righty tighty, lefty loosey.
I know, but like I don't know, my brain just doesn't work that way when it's like upside down or whatnot, and it should. But like, if I go too far, like say I want to open it wide open for some reason, that just takes forever to find that sweet spot through his act, because it just kind of ebbs and flows with the tank, right? Whereas with a gate valve, the lever gives me a visual representation of how open the valve is. It's a little tweaky though, like you're going to tweak it in a different way. It's a little harder to adjust. The gate valves also come with unions on both sides in most cases, right?
I mean, they're tearing you up in the comments for righty tighty, lefty loosey.
I know, man.
Fan even chimed in at Title Gardens.
Funny. I know. I just like, I don't know, man. I get on there and I'm like, I don't know. I screw it up and I don't know. I always mess it up. Maybe I'm just dumb. I don't know.
No.
So I like the visual representation. I like to be able to see how open this thing is, and I will visually remember, like, if I ever need to open or close this thing all the way, I will visually remember exactly where it needs to go, be really close. So, yes,
it'll actually remember it, too, because the nylon inside that actually creates the turn, like it'll have like a memory, that nylon will. So like once you have it at a certain thing and you open it up or you close it, like it'll almost automatically go right back to that same spot. It could be like mulm and other stuff in there, but I've had ball valves do the same thing, where if I've had it at a 45 and then all of a sudden I close it off, I mean, it won't go all the way open, it'll go right back to that 45.
So, right answer is definitely gate valve in this case. I am the oddball, and it's still like if I put the gate valve in, often I'll say, man, I should have put the ball valve in. I should have put the gate valve in. I don't like either one. So I guess it kind of depends also like how easy it is to reach and see where you're at. I don't know.
On Facebook, I don't have it pulled up here, but Robert Cray was asking, could you explain the NO3 how the NO3 brick works, and how much nitrate would a single brick remove in a 210 gallon?
So, two different things. We have a bio brick and we have a nitrate brick.
Right.
The nitrate brick is impregnated, or we call it doped, with elemental sulfur, and that elemental sulfur is like. It depends on how much nitrate is in the aquarium, but batch by batch, it's going to give you X amount of nitrate reduction. And off the top of my head, I really can't tell you exactly how much there is in there that's going to remove the nitrate. Just straightforward. Like, I'd have to go research that part of it. But the way that the bricks work is like they're ceramic material, and we've been doing this for a long time. Like the owner of the company has been doing this type of material for a long time, and so
you guys did the first rockin' thing, right?
Yeah. So we owned a company by the name of Saltwater back in the '90s, which was the first one of its kind. And that material was really problematic because it had silicates in it. It was great at biological filtration, but you'd have to get past like these silicates and stuff like that. And back then, like, natural gas was really expensive, so we'd fire in kilns of like 1400 degrees Kelvin, and so it took a lot. It was expensive to process to make. So the PhD that actually came up with this, and the guy that's been doing this for us, he has perfected a way of doing it in a normal oven, like at 400 degrees or 450 degrees. And he uses a chemical hardener in there. That chemical hardener also helps give us more porosity than we were able to get at baking it at such a high temperature. And it allows us to put things in there like the elemental sulfur, and like even in the PO4 cubes, it's like
GFO type
GFO,
stuff?
ferric oxide. So,
That's a cool thing. Actually, so the first time I asked him about it, I saw like GFO in there, and I'm like, that's just gonna get depleted. That's dumb. I don't understand. And so then I asked you about it, and you're like, oh yeah, it absolutely gets depleted. You have to replace them sometimes. It's just an alternative to having to run that reactor in your tank.
Right.
And I'm like, oh.
With the added benefit of more surface area.
I don't have to tumble it. All the little iron fines aren't getting into the tank, and occasionally when my PO4 or my phosphate starts to rise, I just change out my little cubes. Oh, I get it now. I just didn't see the whole thing. Same thing with the elemental sulfur. Eventually it's going to run out, right?
It's going to exhaust, and so you just trade it out. But by that time, especially in like the brick, the middle of that brick is going to go anaerobic and is going to start doing denitrification, on its own.
Probably
so it's almost like it gives you a leg up as you're starting, to build the bacteria bed inside that brick. The elemental sulfur will give you like a little bit of a buffer with nitrate reduction.
So the answer to one of the questions is how long will it last? Well, when your nitrates start to go up, change out your brick. Because there isn't a total answer to how much you feed. If you feed 2 cubes of food, it'll probably last about half as long as somebody who feeds 1.
That's a good way to put it.
And if you feed 5 cubes of food, it'll last about a fifth as long, right?
Yeah.
So there's no real answer to that.
It's like a sponge. It's only going to absorb so much.
Yeah. I'm glad you bring up the process for the baking and the chemical process, because we still get this question all the time. Like,
right.
Is marine pure crumbles like crazy, or these other ceramic media crumbles like crazy? And I've had Brightwell that has done the same thing. And I think my go-to answer is something you told us is like, there was a time where a couple times where some of the Brightwell stuff might have gone crumbly, but it's been a long time, and we have like 6 months, I think, 4 months, 5 or 6 months, these bricks in our 750 XXL.
They're bulletproof now.
Yeah, people got.
That was not probably a fun experience.
We're not going to have that problem ever again.
See, yeah.
I mean, hundreds and hundreds of like answer to the questions, and it was like at one time 2 years ago, it was like almost like painful, because it was the one thing that people walked up, and so blanketly we just like, you have a problem? Here's a new brick. Sorry.
Perfect. Yeah,
I'm sorry.
That's cool.
Like, personally.
Yeah.
And to that, the nature of that material in itself, like when you have that much porosity, I mean, they weigh nothing, right? You pick them up, you think it's going to be dense, and it's not.
Yeah.
You know, it's like air. Just styrofoam, anything that is like that is going to give you that porosity, it's going to break down to a certain extent. So we've worked really hard at making sure that hardness matters, that they hold up and they stay together.
So open and honest, I see a lot of new things, and it's like, oh, that looks like a Me Too product. We've been talking about Marine Pure for ages. Like, oh, now there's a new brick, great. But in reality, man, using it, like, you can touch it, it's twice as hard as the stuff they were using before. And it has kind of cool little things like the dimples and stuff in it that allows water to go all around it and whatnot. But like at this point for me, it's the one I'm going to use just for the fact that it's harder, which means like when I put it into the tank and it touches other stuff or a pump goes against it, like it's not as likely to deteriorate.
Yeah, and it's not meant to be handled. Like, it's meant to be put in there in a place that you're not going to constantly be moving it. So, I mean, notoriously, you probably should. Any pore that gets clogged with detritus or anything like that is a dead pore. So cleaning it periodically, but it's not something that you have to do. I'm talking like maybe once a year.
Yeah.
Get in there and like
shake them out.
Yeah, shake it out or something like that. So.
Yeah, one of the things actually is I know some of them that you don't sell the little balls, do you?
We don't sell the balls, but we have cubes that are around the same size.
Okay.
So one of the uses people have talked about, and even I've talked about, is replacing like bio balls with these little balls. And I'm going to retract that statement, because having water flushing on top of these things 24 hours a day is just a bad idea. It doesn't matter which one it is. Water is going to erode the things over time, so I wouldn't use them for that application. And talking to Josh over at WWC when we were talking about which ones we wanted to use for the XXL 750 out front, he says, I want to use something that's super easy to clean. So when I want to clean the sump, I can take the 4 things out. We wanted to use like live rock down there or rubble, and he's like, absolutely not, man. I've seen tons and tons of tanks that use live rock or rubble or whatever, and he's like, you can't clean it. No. The tank, the sump should be as clean as the tank. Like, it is a component of the tank. It should be as clean if you want to achieve the same results. And so now, there's 6 bricks in there, and you know what? It's just super easy to move those bricks over, clean the thing out when you need to, and put them back in place. So that is a big piece to me. Like, using all kinds of little squares and balls and stuff, you're going to have to clean around them. Theoretically, there might be a little bit more exposed area or whatnot with those things, but I really like the benefit of being able to just move the bricks around.
For sure.
Yeah. Well, hey, man, we went over. So it's been 11:30. This is our first time. You are our first guest on Aspiros TV Live, or whatever we call it.
We tried with Terrence on Monday. People saw a glimpse of him, but couldn't hear him, so we had to let him go. But
that was Skype, though, wasn't it?
Terrence, you should come up here and do a meat raffle.
Yes.
Life-changing.
Yeah, man, I'm the people here. I mean, we gave away $1,600 in meat to the staff last night. Everybody had a blast. You can see it on our Facebook and stuff. Yeah, I mean, just for you to know, like, we have like little tickets. Like, one of them you just win the thing. The other one you get to like trade meat with somebody else. Or more or less steal it, actually.
Right.
Like, So there's like $100 prime rib floating around. Somebody's trying to get hot dogs.
Traded
with
like
it.
8-9 times.
Yeah. And so actually, I thought it was really cool. So after Black Friday, Jeremy bought the whole staff here lunch, and I've had people here buy like pizzas and stuff for the marketing team or customer service, whatever. He's like, no, man, I want to buy for everybody. There's 100 people here. And so I just thought that was super nice, and his response was, man, like, hey, dude, there's people in the back, man, that are putting a lot of effort into making sure that the, Brightwell products are getting in the box and people care for them, and like everybody along the whole thing, man, deserves respect from, the first call that you get about, hopefully he's thinking about one of his products, but really I think about the whole thing,
right?
But on his products, man, like somebody's caring about it from the phone call to the shipment to if there is an issue, solving it for you. And I just thought that was the coolest thing. And then after that, like, you started a trend.
Yeah.
And like all of a sudden, all these vendors were doing the same thing for the whole staff. So if you're a vendor and you're watching this, meat raffle is the best way to go.
Hashtag,
come on down.
Hashtag BRS meat raffle.
Meat raffle.
I mean, I'm buying you drinks next time if you start meat raffle trend here. So, all right, well, thank you guys all very much. Thank you for coming and having a good time with us. And hopefully you'll come again soon. Hopefully in my basement and you'll take the plumbing challenge. No sandpaper, no primer, no tears for me.
Yeah.
All right, I won't even watch. I can't watch. No, I'm just kidding. All right, see you guys next week.
See you guys.
Actually,
We're
you can see
releasing
30
a video.
minutes. Yeah. Hey, man, this is like, I watched this one after we were done, and I thought, man, this is like accumulation of so much knowledge from WWC. Actually, 1 billion conversations with you two.
Yeah.
And I just feel like this is almost going to be a prerequisite for starting a SPS tank. If you never really thought about it before, you don't have to do it the exact way, but there's so many little tidbits in this one that come together. Watch it,
man,
and you will be better off.
The information, like if I was starting a reef tank, acro tank, in 96 or 97 when acros were getting popular, if this material was there for me, I would have saved so much coral, so much headaches, so much.
I was just watching it, and like 24 minutes of this stuff, it's just like little tidbit after tidbit after tidbit of like, oh man, like I don't have to learn this the hard way.
Yeah, the 19 episodes prior to this one.
Oh yeah, and then you don't have to watch. You can watch 24 minutes. You can get all of the like endless jargon that I had from all the other episodes.
Right.
So you can go back and refer to it if you want. But like we just nailed it down into little tidbits. So in about 30 minutes, man, watch and let us know what you think.
Reef to Reef already got a preview of it. It's out there.
Oh, is it in existence?
It's out there in Reef to Reef. But if you're not a Reef to Reef follower, it'll be on YouTube in about 30 minutes.
All right, awesome. See you guys.
See you guys.